There's ego activity, and there's what we could call hardened ignorance in the form of what's sometimes called the pain body. In Hindu philosophy is called the Vasana. And the Vasanas can bundle together and form a stack of, Swami Vidyaranya called it crystallized ignorance. It blinds us to reality. It's like a stack of records laid down by a evil DJ, and it's playing cacophonous mental music in the background, and it blocks one's awareness of truth itself. The practice is to suspend the activity of this DJ. It's just, that's what the ego does. It identifies with thinking. The identification with thinking creates impressions on the body-mind, and those get laid down as tracks of memory or conditioning that then stack up over time and project a facsimile of reality, which is not reality at all. It's name and form. Namarupa is the Sanskrit word for that. It conditions us to accept objects as real when they're just appearances within our being, and they have no ultimate substance. The Buddha's saying form is emptiness, emptiness is form, is about realizing that the forms that we experience are empty of self-nature, so they don't have their own power from their own side, as it were. Their appearances, just like if we were looking in the mirror, the reflection in the mirror doesn't have its own substance. It's merely a reflection of us. And that awareness that we are, when practiced mindfully, destroys ignorance. The ignorance being that attachment to form that we call ego. It's built up over our whole lives. So whatever conditioning we had when we came into this world, you could call it karma if you believe in past lives. You don't have to believe in that. It could just be the way our parents were and how we were taught. Authority figures, experiences conditioned us to build a certain kind of ego structure, a certain kind of self or personhood, individual personhood, that's not who we are. When we reach adulthood, our job is to dissolve that accumulated ignorance. Ignorance just means not knowing. It means that we attach to the form because we don't know any better, because that's what our parents did and their parents before them. So it's this kind of a hypnotic trance where we attach to thoughts. So we learn to meditate. We suspend this ego activity by witnessing the thoughts without judgment. A judgment is really a new thought that's about the thought that we're witnessing. So we witness the thought without thinking about it and without adding new thought, and it takes its power away. That reification tendency we're calling ego is suspended in that space of awareness that doesn't judge. In other words, a space without thought or a space of no mind. It dissolves that reification tendency and the thoughts just dissolve. That's the natural state of a thought. It arises and dissolves. So it doesn't trap us. Thoughts can arise without telling us who we are, without telling us what the world is. We can witness it consciously, and it's an appearance of our own true nature. So the being that we are is infinite, and we see it everywhere. We just confuse it with these forms that appear, that are produced by an activity of attachment that we're calling ego. It's just that there are layers to it. Again, like an evil DJ laying down recordings in a stack that all sound similar because they're based on our original conditioning. that we came into this life with. And it shapes what we assume to be real as adults. So if we were conditioned to think the world is a scary place through trauma or neglect or abuse, or even just garden variety ignorance, that ignorance being a sense of not being seen because our being is not recognized. It only sees the appearances. So we feel unseen, unloved to that degree. And part of that could be this belief that the world is scary or that we're not worthy of love and respect, things like that. And that those conditioned patterns are unconscious in us. They're hidden for most of us. Maybe we see the tip of the iceberg sticking out of the water a little bit, but there's a vast unconscious storehouse of conditioned patterns underneath that. So we're trying to dissolve it from the top down, as it were, all the way down to the very root of that illusion of separate self. And at some point, the bottom falls out and we realize our true nature as liberated consciousness. And it doesn't come back after that. We're truly liberated then. That's what enlightenment is. That's what spiritual liberation truly is. And I'm bringing this up mainly because sometimes we learn to practice meditation or just being present. We don't have to be sitting on a cushion. We learn maybe from reading or watching videos that this state of being present dissolves these troublesome thoughts and patterns. So we're not laying down new ones so much. And it's having an effect and we feel more peaceful, but we're troubled by those subconscious patterns that emerge that can be deeper and more powerful in a sense to move us in a negative direction in this identification with form, because they're older patterns. And we think, oh no, my meditation isn't working. I practiced a little bit. I felt better. I felt free of thought. I was just clear. I felt happy for no reason. It was great. And then all of a sudden you get triggered by a comment or some event. And one of those patterns gets activated, one of these vasanas. In Vedanta, the vasana, again, is a name for one of these patterns. You could call it a latent tendency. Or in Buddhism, sometimes it's called habit energy. It's like a coiled up spring and it gets triggered and it moves us unconsciously. So we're not being moved by the clarity of our own witness, our own beingness. We're moved by an unconscious pattern and it makes us unhappy and makes us do stupid things, just things that are unskillful. Maybe we get angry and say something to someone that hurts their feelings and it has repercussions for us and we wonder why we're doing it. And the tendency is to want to judge self for doing that. Like, oh, why did I do that? Or, oh no, I did that again. Especially if we're practicing and trying to be more conscious, it may convince us that we haven't made progress or that meditation doesn't work or that the teachings aren't true. The teachings on consciousness and liberation aren't true. The truth is what's happening is you're dissolving the upper layers of a deep stack of tendencies, of patterns. And it's natural to get triggered like that. It's actually an opportunity to wake up more deeply, to dissolve one of those layers. So we learn to say yes to it. Getting triggered, it's paradoxical. It's the opposite of what you would ordinarily expect, that this negative behavior happens. If we can just see it without judging it, it's like opening a gift. Like, oh, wow, isn't that interesting how that pattern reacted and motivated the body-mind to do this thing? And we're the witnessing consciousness. That takes the power out of it. Again, they call them vasanas, and they're likened to seeds that are dormant. And when they get activated, it's like a seed sprouting. When we witness it consciously, it's like roasting the seed so that it becomes inert and doesn't produce those negative movements anymore, negative behaviors. Negative actions you could just call karma. And the word karma means action. When we produce the action and have reactions to it, it can disrupt our lives, and then that lays down new conditioning if we're not careful, and the stack builds back up. So we're trying to burn through this stack of old memories and old patterns. So the way out of it really is to say yes to it, not because it's good or bad. It's usually really unpleasant. Just notice it. And we're not saying it's good. We're not indulging it. If we get angry and say something to someone that's cutting or harmful, we can notice that, witness it consciously, and immediately apologize and realize that it's just one of these vasanas, one of these seeds sprouting. Or it could be like a coiled up spring in a jack-in-the-box, and all of a sudden we uncover it and it pops open. Surprise, you hurt your friend again. These are hard things to see and to experience. It's the non-judgmental awareness that protects you and, in a sense, roasts the seed and burns it up so it doesn't happen again, at least not from that level on the stack. And ideally, we want to work our way down this stack and burn these layers. Sometimes the way we can look at it is the Sanskrit word jnanagni, which means the fire of knowledge. Your awareness of truth is like a fire, and it burns away ignorance, similar to the way a blazing sun will burn away clouds, like the marine layer in an aquatic environment. The sun comes out brilliantly and illuminates everything. It's always there. We just have to cultivate this practice of non-judgmental awareness, and it burns away these illusions, these difficulties that bring us down. Just notice if self-judgment tries to come up, and become curious about it. Just like a scientist would be curious about an insect that he'd never seen before, or she'd never seen before. It has wings and legs, and maybe it uncoils some new appendage that's never been witnessed before. Wow, look at that. That is fascinating. Or it has a defense mechanism that springs out. Kind of like the way a scorpion, for example, has a stinger in its tail, and it'll defend itself. It'll rapidly contract and try to sting its opponent and defend itself. Some of these patterns are like that. It's a defensive coping mechanism we learned from our parents or from society at large. We got conditioned that way. And it's harmful. It harms us, it harms others, it makes us unhappy. Even if in the moment it feels empowering, it is not. It's an illusion. Again, these patterns are what you might call crystallized ignorance that blocks our awareness of reality, of our being. Our true nature is infinite and peaceful and clear. And when we embody this natural being that we are, we're just happy, and we don't say things like that. Or if we do, we notice it without judgment and fry that seed that's sprouting in that moment. That's how it's done. It disempowers whatever negative karmas are there that cause these conditioned patterns to occur. So karma just means action. So maybe you're abused as a child. That's a negative action that was perpetrated on you before you knew what was going on, and it conditioned you in a certain way. And it neutralizes that because we don't want to form an identity based on a reaction to being treated that way, because chances are we'll treat others that way. Hurt people. And it may feel good to lash out at others, similar to the way scratching a mosquito bite feels good initially, but it just makes it worse, more inflamed, raw, red. It'll start to bleed if we're not careful, and it won't heal because we keep scratching it. So judgment, self-judgment is like that. The conditioned actions, again, karmas, the actions that come out of it. So it's like one of those seed sprouts. We take an action, we say something mean, or we, God forbid, commit an act of violence of some kind. If we can witness that unconditionally, non-judgmentally, and just see it for what it is, in the light of our true nature that doesn't judge, it just sees what's there, we'll see the mechanism. We'll catch it when it's sprouting, and it'll wilt, it'll die, it kills the root of it if we stay with it. Whether the practice is sitting meditation or contemplating scripture and sitting with that, reflecting on the deeper meaning of that, or a deep prayer where we don't know what to do and we beseech a higher power to help us. We practice bringing a spiritual focus to these patterns, an unconditional acceptance that says yes to it because it is, not because it's good or bad. That's where the judgment comes in. It's not ultimately good or bad. It's just it either causes suffering or it relieves suffering. That's what we're seeing. We realize that judgments cause suffering, and unconditional or non-judgmental awareness removes the tendency to identify with these patterns, and it takes its power away. These are just appearances of our own true nature, and it's the false attribution of a separate self to those patterns that causes suffering and keeps those patterns going. So the takeaway is, don't think that getting triggered and acting in ways that are harmful are signs that you're no good or worthless or you're not doing your practice right. Those are signs that it's an opportunity in that moment for transcendence, for growth, to bake these seeds, these vasanas, these tendencies that want to take us over, these conditioned patterns, this habit energy. It's unconscious. So we lash out before we know what's happening. It's like an addiction where we're trying not to go into the pub and drink. And next thing we know, we're in the pub drinking again. It's an unthinking, an unreflective movement. Impulsive, compulsive, because we can't stop it without help. Our help is our appeal to a higher power, which is really just our true nature. We're not separate from it. That fire of knowledge roasts, bakes, fries, use any cooking metaphor you want. It burns and bakes and destroys these seeds, these vasanas, these latent tendencies, and we can work through, actually quite rapidly if we practice assiduously, burn through the stack of conditioned patterns and become liberated.